Been about a year since I visited the Haunted Museum in my hometown, so let's talk about it. So if you've been here a long time, then you know I visited this museum twice and I am feeling this weird itch to go again, but I know if I make a video about it and I talk about my experiences, I won't want to go because it'll scare me again. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And what's important to the story is the backstory and the context of the backstory. I had just gotten into content creation and I had mentioned to my boyfriend that I wanted to visit a real haunted place because I've never intentionally been to a haunted place, especially a haunted museum with hundreds of thousands of artifacts from different places and countries. So I was very curious, to say the least. And I thought that direction was the way I wanted my channel to go, the way I wanted my social media to go, the way that I wanted my content creation to go. I wanted to be one of those YouTubers and social media people who go and investigate places. Wrong. I don't think I could do it with just me and my boyfriend ever, and it's because of this. The way the museum is set up is you walk in, you sign a waiver, you're able to rent spirit boxes, flashlights, etc., etc. And this is a self-guided tour completely in the dark. There's multiple levels, so you can either go to the basement or stay on the main floor. But when I say that they really utilize every single square foot, every single inch of this place, I genuinely mean it. From the moment you walk from the front of the museum into the actual museum where you're able to look at things, there are things from ceiling to floor, everywhere. And if you've been here a long time, then you know exactly what I'm about to say. It feels like there are thousands of eyes on you when you walk in. And I'm not just talking about the dolls. I mean, from every single angle, you can feel something or someone watching you. And the first time I went, there was no one in the museum. Both times I went, there was like literally no one in the museum. The very first time I went, I was really nervous because of the experiences that other people were telling me about, and they were like, yeah, this place is actually haunted. But something important to note is this museum used to be in a haunted saloon like 3 towns over, and then they tore the saloon down, so they relocated everything and all the haunted objects, including pieces of the original saloon, to their new location. Mind you, this is like thousands of artifacts and like hundreds of dolls, mirrors, you name it, they have it. Anyways, first time I get there, I am walking through and I am immediately very, very scared. And ghost hunting 101, you should not go into anything being afraid, ever. And if you do go into something afraid, you need to have protection of some sort. I had nothing, and I was just raw dogging this experience because I didn't know what to do. I was pretty uncomfortable upstairs, but the workers had told us, like, everything cool is downstairs. And y'all, I wish they allowed, like, filming, and I might email them to be like, hey, can I come and take a video of the place so I can show my viewers? Because the basement is dirt floors, and they have these red lights everywhere for, like, the vibe. It makes everything so much scarier. Like, but in the basement, all the way to the back, there is this, like, little roped off area, and at the front, there is a huge jug of hand sanitizer. But the jug is not full of hand sanitizer. It is full of holy water that you can use to bless yourself before going into this roped off area. And they have a very specific sign that says everything used in this room, everything that is in this room has been used for very dark things. We're talking like human sacrifice. We're talking about rituals, things like that. I also want to clarify that they have a roped off area and then an additional room behind the roped off area where the really bad stuff is. I also need to clarify that I had no idea that that was back there until I got there. And the whole time I'm telling people, I'm like, I just feel like there is something like peeking around the corner of the back room. And it could have been the vibe. It really could have, because they intentionally make it scary looking. And I kept telling my boyfriend, I was like, I just don't like it down here. It's very heavy. It's very weird. We get to that area. I bless myself. I go in. I don't take a ton of time looking at things. And this is specifically because I could not think. Like, I could not read a sentence. I could not form sentences. I could not speak. I couldn't even focus. But I do remember my boyfriend just, like, rushing to the very back room because he had been to the museum before. And he already knew it was back there. He's like, oh, come on. I just put my face through the doorway. And it seriously felt like I was putting my face up to saran wrap. Like, terrible. I said, absolutely not. I leave. Bless myself again, bless my best friend, bless my boyfriend. everything. Long story short, I decided to go back upstairs. I look at this Ouija board. It makes me very, very sick. My biggest fear is throwing up. So I felt nauseous, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I said, that is it. I got up and I left. And I will not lie. It really, really messed me up. Feeling that way in the museum and then afterwards really messed me up. I was not okay the rest of the night. I didn't talk to any of my friends the rest of the night. And then I wanted to go again. Now, the second time, I was much more prepared. I was like, okay, I can't be afraid, blah, 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 because the spirits will pick on me. And if you've been here a long time, then you know I am more sensitive to things like that happening, but not so sensitive that it's, like, debilitating. Second time is much better. I go to the basement. I'm able to look at things and see things, and I see a Dybbuk box. I see some skulls. I see whatever. But I do still feel the eyes everywhere on me. And it's, like, a gross feeling. It's not like a, oh, someone's watching me. It's like, there is something that wants me to pay attention to it. So we're all walking around. I get a weird feeling and I'm like, I want to go back upstairs. We're walking upstairs. We have a spirit box. The spirit box is saying things sometimes, but only with certain artifacts. We get upstairs. We're walking around. And it's at this point where we're all kind of like, oh, there's nothing really happening. And at this point, it's me, my friend, my boyfriend, all standing in like a little triangle. And we're standing kind of near the staircase that goes into the basement. All of a sudden we hear bum, 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 like someone running up the stairs. And we thought somebody was like messing with us because it sounded so real that we walked over to the stairs and we were like, what the hell was that? There's no one there. No one in the basement. And as we're standing at the top of the stairs, I remember I was standing on the left side of my boyfriend and he was holding the spirit box out and he's like, is there anything there that wants to communicate? And I'm gonna be super honest. I hate that phrase. I hate it. Every single time someone says something like that, it's never just communication. And you want to know how I know that? I was wearing a claw clip. All my hair was back, and I suddenly feel something touching my hair. And that was my breaking point where I was like, I'm leaving. I don't like it. And there had been moments leading up to that point, obviously. And the other instance of that was when I was in the basement and something grabbed my jacket and tugged on it. But I just rolled it off as my friend messing with me. And I know this video is working because I have chicken skin. But what I think is ironic about all of this is the people who own this museum where I live also have another museum of the same kinds of things in Florida. And I guess there are worse things at that one since it's a bigger city than where I live. And ironically, my boyfriend and I are planning to go to Florida sometime soon-ish. So maybe I'll stop there. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
We have an Appalachian mountain story on our hands. So I was listening to one of my favorite spooky story podcasts and I came across this one and it was pretty spooky. This guy says that he went to college at Appalachian State and for fun, he didn't really like to go to bars or to go drinking, but he loved to go to abandoned places and just kind of roam around and explore. So he says that there was some sort of cave that was underneath a bridge and he had been there before, the year prior. Nothing spooky really happened. So he had told his friends, you know what, this place is kind of cool. We should go. His friends are like, okay, yeah, let's go. They are going under there. He says that it's so tight to get in. They have to like shimmy their way in there. First of all, I have claustrophobia. It ain't happening. So anyways, they get there and he says that off the bat, he noticed that it was very different this time. There was so many different markings, pentagram markings, and it looked like someone had some sort of seance in there. Again, that wasn't there the year prior. Nonetheless, they continue on their little tour and they're going deeper and deeper. And right above, they go into this crawl space to get to the next area. Right above that crawl space, it says, he's in there, and it's pointing in the direction that they're going. Of course, people always do and say spooky things, so he didn't think much of it. Him and his friends are like, are you still down? And they were down. They are going into that crawl space to go into the next space, and all he has is a flash to his iPhone. There's a few of them, about 3 of them. So they are crawling in there, and as we know, the flash to our phones cannot reach that far. So he saw some sort of shadow and he didn't know what it was. So he was like, okay, what was that? He asks his friend, for his flashlight because he had an actual flashlight. He shines it and he sees this really weird creature. He says he's never seen anything like this before. He's also never seen a giraffe, but you know what a giraffe would look like. And he had never seen anything similar to this. And as soon as they shine the light to him or to it, it literally started bouncing towards them, like off the walls in no specific direction, just going. Obviously, they book it. They are out. They're like, you know what, forget this. And they're out of there. They end up talking to each other and they're like, okay, we all saw the same thing. What do you think that was? No one had any type of explanation. That next morning, the person that's telling the story says that he is taking a shower. He's brushing his teeth in the shower. And out of nowhere, he spits out like this clot of blood. That had never happened before. Later that day, he meets with one of the friends that went with him into that cave. And the first thing that he says was, hey, you know what's weird? I spit out like a clot of blood today. And they were like, okay, we have to talk to the third person that was with us because... And literally the same exact thing happened to him. He doesn't like to talk about the story. One, because he's scared. Two, he has a feeling that not a lot of people will believe him. But it is so crazy, the lore and the secrecy of what happens in the Appalachian Mountains, because we literally have no idea what is truly going on in there and what any of this is. They ended up doing some sort of research and he ended up coming up with some sort of demon. That it was a demon that was called to protect that area. Nonetheless, he doesn't like to talk about it, but isn't it scary? Like, I don't know, the Appalachian Mountains just freak me out. Listen to the story on the podcast called Radio Rental. So spooky. If you guys have not heard about that podcast, I highly suggest it. And if you guys have any spooky stories, make sure that you send them.
Dominica has entered the chat. If you're from Dominica, here's a spooky story for you. You might not want to watch this one at night. Dominicans will tell you if the bush calls your name after dark, that's Maboya. And it follows you even when you leave the island. I am back with another spooky story. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Mani. So Mani says that my cousin Janelle swears this happened to her when she went back to Dominica last year. And honestly, the way she told it, I still get chills. So she was staying near a small village near the, I'm sorry if I butcher this, the Kalinago territory. The kind of place where the forest starts right behind your house and it gets dark fast. So one night around 9 p.m. Janelle steps outside to take a call. The signal was better near the back steps right where the forest begins. So Janelle's out there and halfway through talking, she heard her name. Janelle. And it sounded like a soft woman's voice. It actually sounded like her aunt calling her. Now Janelle is caught off guard. She's not superstitious, so she answers. She says, yeah? Suddenly the phone call cuts off. She goes inside and, well, her aunt is not even home. Then she heard it again. Janelle, come. And this time it sounds like the voice is coming from outside. Back out there thinking that maybe it is her aunt. Now this is a part of the story that made the hair on her neck stand up. Now Janelle is out there listening out and looking out for her aunt. She hears her name one more time. And this time Janelle is really paying attention to this voice. Yes, it sounds exactly like her aunt. However, it was more flat. It was as though someone was copying her aunt's tone but not the emotion. At this point, Janelle starts getting freaked out, so she backed up toward the house. For some reason, she felt this heavy drag, not physical, but like her attention was being pulled. Then she hears twigs snapping. And the weird thing is, it didn't sound like footsteps. More like something is gliding, but like breaking branches as it moves. And then she hears it again. Her aunt's voice once again. Come now, hurry. But the voice also wasn't matching the way that the sound should move, if that makes sense. And it stayed the same distance no matter how far back Janelle walked. So eventually Janelle backs up, goes inside and locks the door. This is where it gets worse. As soon as she stepped in, her aunt, the real aunt, walks inside the house. As the aunt was walking into the house, she heard Janelle talking. She asked her, who are you talking to? Janelle is like, oh, so it was her aunt. Her aunt just walked in the house and she was hearing her aunt calling her outside. She tells her aunt, yeah, you were calling me. So I went out there to see what you wanted. But as I was out there, like, I couldn't see you. And her aunt just shakes her head immediately. Her face looked drained. She told her, if someone is calling you from the bush after dark, that's Maboya. It's calling in the voice of people you trust. So the most that they could do is pray. They go to bed later that night around 2 a.m. Janelle woke up to the sound of knuckles just tapping on the wooden wall near the bed. It was like slow, deliberate taps. Janelle's too scared to move, so she's just laying there. And the tapping is moving around the room, from wall to wall. And yet again, she hears, Janelle, come outside. Come outside, how about that? I'm so sorry. The window wasn't open and the voice sounded close, like it was already inside the house. So Janelle screams out for her aunt. Aunt came in with blessed oil, prayed and sat with her until morning. And the creepiest part is, even after that night, for Janelle's entire stay, around 2 in the morning, she would hear whispering, either her name being called, tapping on her window. It's not just a voice, it's a presence. It didn't try to drag her away after that, never attacked Janelle or showed itself. Janelle just felt watched the entire time until she left Dominica. Y'all got some spooky stories. I got mimicking spirits too out there. That's very spooky. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to DM it to me right here on TikTok or on Instagram. Oh, and check out my YouTube channel for longer, better, and spookier stories. Like I say at the end of every single video, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of the girl who had a snake. So this girl used to be my older cousin's friend. Remember my elder cousin from the previous story time? Yeah, this used to be her friend. We're gonna call her, for the sake of the story, we're gonna call her Bloom, okay? Bloom came from a really difficult background or whatever, and after high school she didn't have money to go to college and she didn't have money to go to varsity or whatever, so she stayed home until she met this one girl that introduced her to the world of selling your thing for money. Obviously in the beginning this seemed like a good idea or whatever, and Bloom became greedy. You know, she became hella greedy and she didn't want just one guy, she wanted more than one guy to give her money. Bloom and friend decide to go to a witch doctor, you know, someone who can help them get more men per night so that they can make hella money, and also have men that are going to stay. Basically, you know, a relationship where when I need money I call you, when you need whatever you call me. And so they went to this particular witch doctor, and this witch doctor gave them both oils, like these yellow oils to rub on their body every single day that they leave, and men are going to want them. And this witch doctor told them that this is an attraction enhancer. But inside the bottle, man, was a little insect, a very small insect. And they did not take notice of that or whatever. Obviously they asked is it harmful in any way? What are the consequences? Man was like, no, don't worry. When you stop using it, the men will stop coming. That's the only consequence. And they were like, no, I'm chilled. So they used their oils accordingly or whatever, and Bloom built a house for her parents. She bought a car, she had a house for herself in the suburbs. Life was just going good, eh? So one day, Bloom's the oil finished, and they decide, oh, her oil finished first or whatever, and she went back to the witch doctor hey, give me some more of the things. And the witch doctor told her, I'm not going to give you anything else. It's time for you to pay back the person who was helping you. Dala. So basically, that little thing that was inside the bottle was a gremlin or a Tokoloshi's kid. That little thing that was inside there, you took that gremlin's kid and that kid helped you get men. Now it's time for you to pay back. So basically, now you have to work for the gremlin. Every single day, whether you like it or not, you are going out to find at least 5 guys. And you are going to sleep with all 5, young or old, it doesn't matter. And according to Bloom, when she left, the gremlin followed her, but she didn't see it. And the witch doctor told her that it's going to come with you. You don't have a choice. She was scared. When she got to her house or whatever, she wanted to call her friend. And she says that everybody can't see the gremlin, but she can. Every day the gremlin would give her those little thingies, which is one of her babies. She would have to swallow the baby, and she would have to go out. 5 men, 5 lakh. Sorry, I meant 5 men equals to 5 lakhs, 5 blessings. You take them using that kid. Whatever that they insert in you, they are taking that kid, and that kid is going to follow them, and it's just going to be hardships and nothing but terrible things following them. As for you, you come back and you're gonna have money still, but you're working for the gremlin. So one day, Bloom got tired of all of this and she went to my cousin and she told her everything. My cousin was like, damn, she didn't really believe her, but she was like, hey, you guys really want money like nobody's business. And the following day, guys, she wrote a letter and she unalived herself in her apartment. Her house obviously burnt down and they rebuilt it or whatever and it burnt down again. Whatever they do, like when they try to sell that yard, nobody wants to buy it. When people buy it, they sell it or whatever. Like it's a yard with no house. If you buy it, you can, add your house, and people can't buy it because of the gremlin that stays there. Also, the house that she built for her parents, half of the house for some reason, I don't know, I think apparently it crumbled and it fell or something. I don't know, but something happened. And, luckily for them, they were able to rebuild it because Bloom was saving money, in her bank accounts, and she didn't have kids, so the money went to them and they fixed the house. But don't do things just because it looks good on the outside, guys. Somebody giving you oil and being like, oh, it's just an attraction enhancer, nothing is gonna happen. You should know that with spiritual things, there is always consequence. Every good deed does not go unpunished, just like every bad deed.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill, featuring the necklace, per usual. Commission is going towards my nursing home HO2 recipients. Simple as that, it comes in a 2-pack. I haven't been wearing the other one just because I'm lazy. So, on to the story. The demon in the dorm room. Oh, I've toyed with telling my experiences to someone with a platform for years, but I get good vibes from you. Period. After I graduated high school, I went to a local college founded in 1868, the same school that my mom and my aunt went to when it was still a women's college. It was open for over 170 years before closing down permanently due to mismanagement. That'll get ya. That sure will get you. But for a few reasons, maybe that isn't entirely bad. See, this college used to advertise itself as being one of the most haunted colleges in the United States, and would play into the reputation by hosting ghost walks and paranormal investigators, at least in the time that I was there. I mean, when you want something unique and you're trying to get those grants, But one thing about the school is that it was super isolated. Unless you had a car, the only way off campus was a shuttle service that was a horror story in and of itself. Ask me how I got left at the mall at 3 a.m. So besides sleeping around and indulging in enough substances, the entire campus smelled like weed. What were bored college kids supposed to do? Their schoolwork? I don't know. The smart ones got into witchcraft. The dumb ones got into Ouija boards. Oh. Now, I should emphasize this campus was always haunted. My mom had ghost stories of one breathing on the back of her neck in the stairwell, as if pushing her to go down faster in one of the buildings that had previously caught fire. Yikes. Everyone also told stories of the ghost nuns from when the main dorm building was a TB ward who would tuck sick students into their bed. There were also stories from some alumni members who lived in that building of a gargoyle-like creature that would perch on top of their wardrobes and stare down at them. So this bitch was haunted. Even my friend B had a fingerprint on the outside of her window, and she lived on the 4th floor of the building with said window facing a blocked off central courtyard. Needless to say, the place was a hotbed of activity, and I've barely scratched the surface. But then there was the demon. Freshman year, B and I lived in one dorm building, and a former friend of ours, A, lived in the other. Whenever any of our friends would go over to A's dorm room, it was like walking into a walk-in cooler. Which was significant because neither freshman dorm building had AC, and this was happening when the weather was so hot and muggy, kids would be jumping in the lake between classes. Why the fuck was there no AC? A's roommate was almost never there, and we learned that she basically moved into her girlfriend's room due to the activity. Pots and pans in the closet would be changing around at night, things like prized jewelry would go missing, and A's boyfriend even heard it all happening over Skype after she'd fallen asleep. It got so bad that eventually one of the campus witches reached out to a team of psychic mediums. It's like fucking Hogwarts or something. There was enough spiritual activity on campus in general. The three of them crossed over several ghosts before even stepping foot into the room. But the moment they did, the leader looked at A, pointed to the spot on the floor our group of friends had congregated around so many times, and said, "You played the Ouija boards right there." Now let me get this straight. I've had a long time fascination with the paranormal and a sensitivity to ghosts for years, but I don't fuck with Ouija boards. Thank God, And luckily, neither did anyone in our friend group, but the same can't be said for the person who had been using that dorm room over the summer and didn't close out the game properly. Bitch, isn't the only thing that you gotta do is say fucking bye? Correct me if I'm wrong. The psychic said that it had left a portal open and a demon had come through and it was hiding in the closet as we spoke. Fuck No, not the demon in the closet. Come out of the closet, babe, it's okay. The team of 3 did a ritual to drag the demon out of the closet and seal the portal. And I swear on the mother, the maiden, and the crone that the room got 30 degrees warmer instantly. During all of it, I personally experienced an incredibly strong spiritual phenomenon, is the best way I can put it, that caused tears to stream down my face. And after it was done, feeling bold, I told the demon to stay. Bitch, what? What? The hoopress bell rang for me almost immediately, as when I stepped off the bed to leave the room, my foot landed right on the portal area and I had to run out of the room immediately to retch my guts up in the toilet. Yeah, you deserve that one a little bit, because what the fuck are you actually doing? What are you doing? The team left A instructions to line the door with salt and every month sweep it up and throw the salt in the lake, as the seal wasn't a permanent one. A never followed up on this. Y'all don't fucking listen. You want help and then you don't listen? Ugh. There's multiple reasons that B and I fell out with A for being a bad person, but I do sometimes wonder if her living with a demon in her room had any effect on her less than becoming attitude. You know how the Horcrux made Ron and Harry angry because it was a fucking Horcrux, and Harry was saying that he just felt angry all the time because he was a fucking Horcrux? I assume that a demon could definitely have that effect on you. You know what I mean? Just bad energy. I'm just saying. I have so many more stories from the school, including the most terrifying night of my life where I encountered a very hungry spirit. But this is already so long that my own spiritual torment will have to be a part 2. Wishing all of my fellow spooky storytime listeners the best. Q. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It sounded like a show, like a movie or a show, especially the whole school situation in general. They're utilizing the hauntedness to try and make it a tourist attraction almost. That sounds like a crazy movie, but there's actual really haunted stuff there. You know what I mean? That would make an interesting movie if it isn't one already, or a show. I'm just saying. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see y'all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Every single state in the U.S. has had at least one serial killer, if not multiple. Today I'm telling you guys about the most notorious serial killer from Virginia, another terrifying, horrible person. If you're new here, this is a map of all the states I've covered so far. So today we're talking about Leslie Leon Burchart, and he was born August 3rd of 1949. And he had a decently normal childhood, although his mom was a diagnosed schizophrenic, and that did cause some issues in his home, and that was hard to deal with at times. He grew up, graduated from high school, again, kind of a normal childhood overall, nothing really of note. And he ended up getting a variety of different jobs. As the years passed, his mental health began to decline pretty rapidly, and he ended up quitting his job, and eventually he lost his house and he became unhoused. In 1992, he's 43 years old at this point. He's arrested for trespassing and indecent exposure, and he served a 6-month sentence. And during this time, he started to hallucinate. He started saying he was hearing voices, and he started trying to plug his ears with toilet paper to drown the voices out. So he is clearly mentally unstable and struggling. He ended up assaulting a guard and was transferred, and then was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And then a second examination says that he is incompetent for readaptation into civil society. And so in November of that year, he is transported to a nursing home for the mentally ill. And he's basically thinking he's never going to get out again. But somehow, 2 years in 1994, he escapes, and he starts living as a vagrant again. He's making a living selling scrap metal and stealing, and he's just doing what he can to get by. 2 years after his escape, though, in July of 1996, he is arrested for trespassing. And while the police are interviewing him and being why are you trespassing? And we're looking at your history, you've done this before. He randomly just starts admitting that he murdered people. He just randomly admits that he murdered 3 people and assaulted many others. And so the police are is this guy telling the truth? We can see he has a history of mental illness and hearing voices. They weren't really sure if he was telling the truth, but obviously they're going to look into it. And he tells them that his first murder was in June of 1994, right after he escaped. He says he killed a 35-year-old homeless man named Montague DeWitt Wilson. He strangled him because he owed him money. He also says he killed a 46-year-old named Gary Wayne Shelton, who was another homeless man, who he had beaten and crushed his skull in with a blunt object on June 14th of 1996. And then he says less than 15 days later, after killing Gary, he met a 42-year-old carpenter named John Wade Pleasance, who had invited him for a drink at his apartment. But Leslie ends up beating him and strangling him to death after the pair got in an argument, and we don't really know what it was about. And also says he assaulted a homeless woman so bad that when she went to the hospital, she had 36 different skull fractures, but somehow, luckily, she survived. So the police are like shocked by this, obviously. They're like, first of all, this is unprompted information, so we weren't expecting it. Also, you're a horrible person. And so they start looking into this to see if they can corroborate his stories. And unfortunately, because multiple of his victims were homeless, people just didn't take their deaths seriously or their disappearances seriously, which is a pattern in our law enforcement and our systems, which is so disappointing and wrong. They end up learning that, like, he definitely killed these people. So he is charged for these crimes and he's sent to trial and he is found guilty and he is sentenced to 105 years in prison. And this seems like the end of the story. He's arrested, he admitted to killing 3 people and assaulting another. Like, he's a bad guy. Let's close this chapter and move on. Like, we got the guy and we can move on. However, during the time that he was in Richmond, Virginia, from 1990 to 1996, so before he was in prison and sent to the psych facility and then after he escaped, there had been an active serial killer that was named the Golden Years Killer in the media, and they had killed at least 13 elderly women. These women were Mabel Venable, who was 89. She was killed on July 1st of 1990. Eva Jones, who was 80, who was killed on October 2nd. Mary Coffey, who was 61, was killed the next day on October 3rd. And then Robinette Mickleberry, who was 61, was killed on May 6th of the following year, so 1991. Pearl Gash was 85. She was killed December 17th of 1991. Martha Bolden, who was 81, she was killed May 21st of 1992. Phyllis G. Harris, who was 59, and she was killed on August 16th of 1994. Inez J. Childress, who was 82, and killed on September 14th of 1994. And then there was a lull for 2 years in the killings. And then they start back up again in 1996. Lucille G. Boyd was 75. She was killed January 1st of 1996. Gertrude Gardner, who was 77, was killed on February 2nd. Mamie Harris Verlander, who was 84, was killed on March 28th. Elizabeth Siebert, who was 69, was killed on April 23rd. And finally, as far as we know, Jane E. Foster was killed the next day on April 24th, and she was 55 when she was killed. Clearly, like, a horrible, terrifying person to prey on, like, elderly women. That's a devastating thing that is happening. And again, this is happening at the same time that he says he was actively killing homeless people. 3 years into his sentence for the 3 murders he had admitted to, Leslie somehow gets in contact with the police department that's local, and he says he had killed more people and he wants to admit it now. He says that he had killed 4 of the women I listed that were part of the 13 victims of the Golden Killer. He says he killed Jane Foster, Elizabeth Siebert, Mamie Verlander, and Lucille Boyd. So the police are like, is he telling the truth? Because again, we aren't sure if he's telling the truth. He's a little bit crazy. But then they're like, is he the Golden Years Killer as well? Like, is that possible? He's actually like a serial killer. And so the police end up taking this seriously. They interview him. At first, again, they're a little bit skeptical he's telling the truth, but they still want to like listen. He gives them very specific, very graphic details that only the killer would have known about those 4 women. And so they believe him. And he later pled guilty to those 4 murders and is given an additional 5 life terms to be served consecutively after the 105-year sentence. So he's never getting out. He wasn't already, but like extra now. They're like, okay, what about these other 9 victims? Like, did he kill them too? And he never admitted to it, but there is a lot of speculation that maybe he did. In the early 2000s, Leslie ended up beginning to suffer from health issues and was diagnosed with a bunch of different cardiovascular diseases. And on August 1st of 2002, he died. So he'll never be able to admit to any more murders. In November of 2013, a retired police detective, his name was Ron Reed, he ended up coming forward. He had been a part of Leslie's like investigation. He was a part of the arrest. He conducted the interviews with him. And he said that he thinks that Leslie likely killed many more people than the people he was convicted of. Some of the victims he thinks he might have killed was 81-year-old Rachel Henshaw, who died in a nursing home in Richmond on June 20th of 1996. 47-year-old William R. Merrill, who was a homeless man that Leslie supposedly would have strangled with his own shirt on June 18th. And he says that there's others as well, but that his higher-ups wanted to keep all this quiet because at the time they didn't want any more negative publicity. And Ron says, quote, he said, he's talking about Robert, when he killed other women, the only reason he'd done it was because it reminded him of his stepmother. He said he killed homeless men because they reminded him of himself, end quote. He also goes on to talk about how there's this whole cover-up. His higher-ups did not want anyone knowing about all these murders. At the time, there's a lot of unsolved murders in Virginia. And in 1996 alone, there were 114 murders. And Richmond was almost named the murder capital of the US. So all the police, all the like leaders in the area are very tense at the time because obviously they don't want to be labeled as that. So Ron Reed says like they totally covered things up and we should have caught him a lot sooner, and he likely did a lot more and maybe was the Golden Years Killer. But we just will never know because they didn't want to follow up with it because they would rather hide it than get justice for the victims. And of course, the Richmond Police Department has come forward. They state that this is not true, but it does seem pretty suspicious. As of January of 2025, so at the beginning of this year, the majority of the murders remain unsolved, and most people obviously think that Leslie killed them all. It's kind of suspected that Leslie planned to continue to slowly admit to these murders, and he was using it as leverage to get out of prison, to get interviews, to get attention, whatever he wanted. And so it seems like what he was doing is just admitting to a few at a time to keep the police's attention, and that way he would keep getting what he wanted over the years in prison and kind of making his life in prison more enjoyable for himself. But then he died from cardiovascular disease, and he never got to admit to any of the others. It is believed that not only did he kill 3 people he admitted to originally, and then the other 4, believes he killed all 13 of the Golden Years victims, maybe more elderly women that they didn't even think their death was suspicious at the time, and they just went undetected. This Leslie guy was terrifying because he went undetected for so long. He targeted homeless people and elderly people because he knew that he could get away with more. And his mental health had been declining very rapidly, and it's very unfortunate that no one saw the warning signs sooner, that he harmed so many people and probably harmed way more than we even realize.
Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. These are both from the same person. There's going to be a part 1 and a part 2. I was staying at my aunt's house when I was about 12 years old. She hadn't moved into the house long ago, and there was nothing particularly weird about it yet. One night, my cousin Louie and I were watching a paranormal TV show. We loved them, and it made us want to go outside. It was around 9 o'clock and it was winter, so it was very dark. We went out into the garden, which, bear in mind, is quite large. It's especially long. At the end of the garden, they have motion detector lights and garden chairs set around a fire pit. We weren't anywhere near the end of the garden when the lights suddenly switched on. As they did, I saw what looked like a person sitting on one of the garden chairs. We initially assumed it must have just been their dog, Ezzy. As we got closer, I saw a weird, sort of distorted-looking shadow move across the fence, which Louie didn't see. Then, the figure was gone. We didn't think anything of it at the time, and we decided to go inside. As we went in, we called for the dog, but nothing followed. We just assumed she wanted to stay outside for a bit longer. However, as we entered the house, we saw Ezzy sitting on my uncle's lap. We went back outside to check. Nothing was there. We still haven't figured out what we saw that night. I'm not sure if I want to know, to be honest. It was definitely something, all right. Something creepy. And something I don't ever want to see. Okay, part 2. Bear in mind, my mom never believed in anything paranormal up until this point. My mom was driving down a road that runs right next to a cemetery and has a very sharp bend. At the time, she had my brother in the car. He was about 7, and me, I was about 1. She always used to drive down that road too fast. Every time she took the bend, she would think that she must stop doing that or she'd end up swerving off the road. So she wasn't paying attention and drove down it again just like any other day. That's when she saw a woman standing in the middle of the road. I don't remember it, but this is how my mom described her. The woman was transparent and looked like she was from the 1800s. She had an old, threadbare gown on and simply stood there in the middle of the road. My mom slammed on the brakes, but she was going too fast and couldn't stop in time. She braced for a big impact as the car slammed into the woman, but nothing happened. My brother screamed, and so did my mom. When my mom managed to pull the car over, there was nothing there. No sign of any blood, gown, or injury, and certainly no human. Okay, I think that old lady ghost was definitely telling your mom to slow down with y'all in the car with her. I think that spirit was definitely there to help.
In the case of Ellen Greenberg, it is so incredibly, blatantly obvious to me what happened. I'm not even sure how the argument that she could have done this to herself is even in the conversation. All of the evidence screams there was foul play involved, but let me give you guys all of the information and then you guys let me know what you think. Ellen Greenberg was born in New York City to her parents Josh and Sandy. She was an only child and born in New York but raised in Pennsylvania. After high school, she attended Pennsylvania State University, graduated, and even went on to get her master's degree. Following that, she moved to Philadelphia. She eventually met and got into a relationship with Sam Goldberg. He was a producer for NBC Sports at the time, and Ellen was a first grade teacher. Everyone who had the opportunity to get to know Ellen in her very short 27 years of life said that she had this calm, soft-spoken, fulfilling energy about her. She had the ability to make every single person in the room feel comfortable, and she always went out of her way to put effort into her friendships. She loved her family, she adored her students, she loved sports and teaching and coffee, and she loved her fiance Sam. They lived together in an apartment building in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor. They were planning a wedding. Ellen had just been dress shopping. All was good until it wasn't. January 26th of 2011 was a Wednesday. That day, a very big snowstorm hit the Philadelphia area, causing classes at Ellen's school to be canceled. That morning, she had gone to school. She had talked to her mom on the way there, but the snow really got heavy in the afternoon, so she was able to leave work early around 1:30 p.m. and she headed back to their apartment. She left work, stopped to get gas, got back to their apartment. Her fiance Sam was also home. She set her things down, worked a little bit more on grading papers and whatnot, and then she made herself something to eat. She made herself a fruit salad. She called a restaurant around 2:30 p.m., unsure why, maybe to make a reservation, maybe to order food for pickup, not sure. Around 4:50 p.m., Sam, her fiance, went downstairs to go and work out at the gym that was on the first floor of their apartment building. He would later recall that when he walked out of the apartment, Ellen was completely fine. There was nothing out of the ordinary in terms of her behavior. She was on her computer when he left, and we know that because there was activity on her computer at 4:45 p.m. He left to go to the gym around 4:50. Sam worked out and then headed back upstairs around 5:30 p.m., but when he went to walk inside of their apartment, he realized that the front door was locked. It was one of those little latch swing locks that was locked, so he was able to open the apartment door, but only a couple of inches because of that hatch lock. He started knocking on the door, banging on the door, calling out for Ellen, but she wasn't coming to unlock the door. Then he started texting her, and his text messages were quite sassy, saying things such as, "Hello, open the door. What are you doing? Hello, I'm getting pissed. You have no idea. You better have an excuse." Ellen was not responding, not in person through the door, not to his text, not to his phone call, so Sam decided to walk downstairs to find the security guard to get him to help him get back into the apartment. He couldn't help him, so Sam went back up to the 6th floor to knock some more to try and wiggle the door and play around with the lock to see if he could get the door opened. That didn't work, so he went back downstairs for a second time to look for the security guard or the doorman, but he was told that they couldn't help him because it was against company policy or something of that sort. So Sam went back up to the 6th floor and he resorted to breaking down the door. He pushed on it with a lot of force, mainly using his shoulder to push on the door until the lock broke. The door swung open, and there Sam saw his 27-year-old fiance, the love of his life, Ellen Greenberg, lying on the floor with a pool of red liquid around her. It was more than clear that all of that red was coming from Ellen herself, and Sam could tell that Ellen wasn't breathing. Sam called 911 to report the scene that he had just walked in on, and the operator on the phone got working on getting the police and an ambulance sent out to their apartment. But the 911 call, go listen to it on YouTube if you haven't, because I'm not exaggerating when I say that the way that Sam was describing the scene, this brutal crime scene that he just walked in on with the love of his life on the ground, unresponsive, you would think that he was talking about the weather or something so minuscule. It has been described as one of the strangest 911 calls that people have heard. Like, maybe his words showed concern, but the tone of his voice certainly did not. The first thing that he says is, quote, "Help, I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with everywhere," end quote. He tells them that he doesn't know what happened because he wasn't inside, saying, quote, I went downstairs, go work out, I came back up, the door was latched. My fiance's inside, she wasn't answering, so after about half an hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with like she's not responding, end quote. He says that Ellen is lying on the floor on her back. The operator then asks him if she's breathing, and he says, quote, I really don't think she is, end quote. The operator says, well, look closer. Is her chest moving up and down? And Sam says, I don't see her moving. They ask him if he knows how to do CPR. He says no. The operator then says, are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone? And he says, quote, I have to, right? End quote. But I'm telling you, the way that he's talking is so monotone, as if he forgot that he was supposed to be showing emotion through the phone. And to me, this is my own personal opinion, but it doesn't sound like the kind of monotone when people are in shock and numb. No, Sam to me sounds like he's focusing way too much on what he's supposed to say rather than how he's supposed to be saying it. This is his tone of voice, and I'm not even exaggerating. He says, quote, I went downstairs to work out and I came back up. The door was latched. Oh, like it was, it wasn't like, it was locked from the inside, and I'm yelling. No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break down the latch, but to get in. All right, thank you. Okay, bye. It's really that casual. So when the operator tells him that he's going to have to attempt to do CPR, for some reason, even though at the beginning of the call he said that he found Ellen lying on the floor on her back,
I guess, somehow, he had not noticed the biggest piece of evidence there was to see. Only when the operator is then instructing him on how to do CPR, he goes to rip her shirt and he says, in this tone of voice, he says, "Oh my God, she stabbed herself. She fell on a knife. Oh no, there's a knife sticking out. There's a knife sticking out of her heart," end quote. Don't ask me how or why it took him so long to notice, but that's when he does. And I can tell you that I've expressed more emotion in my voice when I've accidentally dropped to my phone versus when Sam is reporting that his fiance is unresponsive with a deep wound with something sticking out of her heart. And then he says, quote, "I'm just gonna let her down here now. I mean, what do I do?" End quote. When paramedics got there, they arrived at the apartment. They walked into a scene that did not make sense. Ellen was sitting on the kitchen floor, propped up against the kitchen cabinets like someone had set her there, sitting upright, her right hand wrapped around the that was buried deep in her chest. But she was holding it with her right hand, even though she's left-handed. It also looked like her body had been moved somewhere between the moment that Sam first called 911 to report the scene and the moment when paramedics arrived. 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg was pronounced deceased at the scene, and before her autopsy was done, officers at this scene ruled her death an unaliving because she was the only person inside the apartment when she passed, allegedly. They didn't question the first responders that were there first and were the first to see her body. They didn't tape off the scene as a crime scene, didn't really investigate it. That was kind of that. They just left. But Ellen had suffered 20 wounds on her chest, the back of her head, her neck, and her back. The one that ended her life was to her chest, and it was 4 inches deep. She was also covered in bruises in different stages of healing. 20 wounds, one so deep to her head that it went through her brain. And when the medical examiner took a look at her body the very next day, obviously there was no question that somebody had done this to Ellen, that there was foul play involved, so Ellen's cause of death was then changed and ruled a homicide. But then the medical examiner was called into a meeting with the investigators working in this case. It was the medical examiner with members of the police department and the DA's office. That was a private meeting. And whatever was talked about in there obviously changed the medical examiner's mind, because afterwards, Ellen's cause of death was ruled again as an unaliving. According to investigators, the reason as to why it was changed back to an unaliving was 1, because of the lack of defensive wounds on Ellen, 2, the fact that the apartment door had been locked from the inside, and 3, because there was no signs of anyone else being in the apartment and because only her DNA was found on the weapon. So even though it was almost completely impossible, I would even say myself it was definitely impossible that Ellen would have been capable of causing those 20 injuries to herself on her back and on her head, because she had no defensive wounds and because there was no proof of forced entry, it was ruled that she must have done this to herself. And the thing about a cause of death is that if you, a medical examiner, are unsure, you can list the cause of death as undetermined. If you list it as undetermined, the case remains open. But if you list it as unaliving, then that's it. Case is closed. To review the timeline again real quick, at 4:45 p.m., Ellen is on her computer. At 4:50, Sam leaves for the gym. At 5:26, Sam leaves the gym. By 5:30, he's knocking on the apartment front door, realizing that it's locked. He goes down to try and get help. He goes back up to the 6th floor, goes back down again, goes back up, breaks the door down, finds Ellen. Sam calls 911 at 6:31 p.m., assuming that was when he found Ellen, meaning he would have been trying to enter his apartment for an entire hour from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., which is a long time. Luckily, apartment buildings have security cameras, and based on his movements caught on CCTV footage, in the movements that were seen, because not all of them were, but in the movements that were seen, there seems to be a gap between 6 p.m. and 6:28 p.m. when Sam is not seen on camera. And do you want to know what's something very, very strange about that? In that period of time where his movements are unaccounted for, Sam spoke to 2 people on the phone, his cousin at 6:14 p.m. and his uncle at 6:26 p.m., both lawyers. Josh and Sandy, Ellen's parents, were snowed back in at their house when they got the news that Ellen was gone. Her mom said that when she got the news, all she knew was that her world went dark and that she no longer had a daughter. Remember, Ellen was an only child, and her mother will forever and always be a mother, but it just breaks my heart for her parents. Ellen's parents, as well as her psychiatrist, were pretty bewildered at the thought that Ellen could have done this to herself, because her parents admitted that, yeah, she had been going through some work-related stress, but other than that, there was absolutely nothing that would have signaled that Ellen would have done something like this to herself, that she would have wanted to leave forever. Ellen had been dealing with anxiety, which is why she was seeing a psychiatrist in the first place, and she had been prescribed anti-anxiety medication as well as Ambien, which is medication to help you sleep, but her psychiatrist's last notes from their most recent session stated very clearly that Ellen was not showing any signs of not wanting to be here anymore. And I know that you can never know what really is going through someone's minds and if they are considering wanting to leave forever, But the signs from both her family members, the people closest to her, as well as her psychiatrist, definitely have to be considered here, I think. Her psychiatrist also stated that she seemed to be very happy in her relationship with Josh. Her parents were supportive of her relationship with Josh, stating that he was, quote, a fine young man. And they also thought that there was no reason to suspect unaliving in any way, shape, or form. They said that she was a happy person, an anxious person, but still a happy one. Her students loved her, her family loved her, her friends loved her. She was in the middle of planning a wedding, not to mention little things like the fact that she had just gotten gas in her car right before she got home. She made herself a fruit salad that she did not eat. She also called the restaurant when she got home, possibly to make a reservation for the night. Her behavior overall and the things that she did earlier in that day were just not consistent with someone who was planning on unaliving herself. And I know that the door being locked from the inside is a big thing and definitely is something that should be taken into consideration, but so should the literal medical evidence. The medical examiner ended up sending a portion of Ellen's spinal column to a lab to be analyzed, because if the wound to the back of Ellen's neck had penetrated deep enough, that would suggest that it could have paralyzed her and made her unable to continue causing the additional injuries to herself. But the final ruling for that was that the wound was not deep enough, not severe enough to cause paralysis, meaning that it would have been possible somehow for her to continue performing multiple wounds. And 5 weeks after finding Ellen's body, after some back and forth, her cause of death was officially ruled and left as an unaliving. But 20 wounds. Let's just say that each wound would have taken her 1 second. Between movements, each one, 1 second, which I don't think that's possible. It definitely would have taken her more than 1 second. But let's just pretend that each wound took her 1 second. If she did this to herself, let's count how long that would have taken her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It just makes no sense to me how she could have done that to herself 20 times, 20 different wounds, one so deep that it went through her brain. And don't even get me started on how she could have done this to the back of her own body. Not to mention that Ellen was a squeamish person. She changed her mind when she was getting her ears pierced because she didn't like to feel pain. Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy, were not accepting of the ruling being an unaliving. They hired private investigators, forensic scientists, pathologists, and lawyers to look at the evidence on their own and get their own opinion, and all of them stated that her injuries were inconsistent with an unaliving. A forensic pathologist writing in his report, quote, "It is my professional opinion that the manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide," end quote. And a forensic scientist also writing, quote, "The number and types of wounds and stain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene," end quote. And if you want to focus on the fact that Ellen had a lack of defensive wounds, fine. But then you also have to consider the fact that she could have been caught completely off guard by whoever did this to her, leaving that as a reason as to why she would not have defensive wounds. She didn't have time to defend herself. And in regards to the wound on the back of her neck, even though it was ruled that it did not leave her paralyzed, a member of the Philadelphia's crime-solving organization also took a look at it and stated that you could clearly see that some nerves were severed, meaning that at the very least, she would have been in excruciating pain, leading her to become unconscious or lose at least some motor skills. And in concluding basically their own investigation, Ellen's parents also discovered that the door lock could have been tampered with and that it could have somehow been locked after Ellen had already passed. So every single argument that law enforcement had to back up their claim that this was an unaliving was questionable. And there were reasons to question literally everything, yet it seems like no one could have been bothered to do so. Even though Ellen's parents and loved ones fought as hard as they could to get justice for their daughter, a detective they hired said their first priority was to get the cause of death changed first, because if they got that changed, then they could turn their attention into finding the person responsible. But it needed to start with getting that changed. Ellen passed away in 2011, but her parents were not giving up, and because of their continued fight for justice, in 2019 they were able to get the case reopened, but then it was closed again with the same conclusion, an unaliving. Since then, Ellen's parents filed 2 civil lawsuits related to Ellen's death, one against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office to change the ruling on her cause of death, and one against the City of Philadelphia and the former Chief Medical Examiner, Sam Golino, claiming that the city officials covered up details of her death. Both lawsuits were settled this year in February of 2025. And with the settlement reached, it meant that Ellen's death would yet again be reinvestigated. And the pathologist who conducted Ellen's original autopsy back in 2011 himself came out, and he said that even he no longer agreed with the ruling of her cause of death being an unaliving, and he said that the manner of death should be changed to be something other than an unaliving. But guess what? On October 10th of 2025, in a 32-page report, Chief Medical Examiner Lindsay Simon, considered to be Philadelphia's top pathologist, closed the case again, ruling that Ellen Greenberg's death was an unaliving. And Sam, her fiance, has never been once looked at as a suspect. The Greenbergs continue to push for answers to this day, but I mean, it's just unbelievable. But yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Ellen's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Story time as to how a desperate psycho woman tries to steal another woman's life. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous, so let's call her Isabella. Isabella and Victor have been married for about 25 years. In those 25 years, they acquired multiple businesses and multiple properties. Like, they had a whole life together. Their marriage had always been great until one day it wasn't. One day Victor started acting very cold and distant toward Isabella. He was disappearing for hours at a time, not really giving a reason as to where he was. Money started to disappear left and right. Isabella started to really suspect that he was in fact with someone. It wasn't until one day Isabella's older daughter ran into him at a restaurant with another woman. Let's call the woman Clara. The woman was about 30 years younger than him. And at the restaurant, he was very touchy-feely with the girl, so there was absolutely no other way or explanation than the fact that he was there with his lover. After Isabella found out, she went ahead and filed for divorce and kicked Victor out. Isabella did notice that the moment she filed for divorce and he was out of the house, she became extremely ill. Like, she couldn't sleep at night, she had night sweats, she had headaches, she stopped wanting to eat. She became extremely weak. And on top of it, she started having like thoughts, like very dark thoughts that she knew were not coming from her. Thinking that maybe this all had to do with the whole trauma of going through a divorce after 25 years, she's tried to kind of like shrug it off until one day she was talking to her mom about it. Her mom is extremely spiritual. Let's call her mom Doña Marisol. She was talking to Doña Marisol and she tells her all of the symptoms, and her mom tells her that doesn't sound like a health issue, that sounds like a spiritual issue. It sounds like someone is doing some work on you, some very dark, bad work. Her mom told her she would go and investigate. She called one of her friends who happened to practice. The friend did a reading on Isabella, and she literally gasped at what the reading said. The reading showed that Isabella had literal death upon her, like a hex of death, where someone wanted her out of the way. They wanted her gone. Clara wanted everything Isabella had. She wanted the houses, she wanted the businesses, she wanted the money. She did not want Victor to have to split anything with Isabella. So her answer was, of course, to resort to dark magic. Apparently, the hex was so bad that Isabella had to literally drop everything, book a flight, and go straight to Mexico where her mom was to get cleansed, like to get like a crazy cleansing. The moment she got there, her mom took her to the curandera and they started to work on her. Apparently multiple people had to work on her, and she says that while they were doing the cleansing, there was like this white liquid or foamy liquid coming out of her mouth and her nose, and it was essentially la malicia, or like the hex coming out of her body. It took days to get this thing off of her, but eventually they were finally able to cleanse her off of it, and she felt completely lighter. She went ahead and asked the curandera what would happen now, like where it was gonna go, or if it was gonna go back to the person who sent it, and the curandera said absolutely it's going back to the person who sent it, because I'm not staying with it. Not long after, once Isabella was back, okay, let me just add, when Isabella got back, they were in the process of getting a divorce with Victor. Victor was giving her a hard time about everything. When she went to court, Isabella ended up with everything. She got the houses, she got the businesses, she got the money. He even had to pay her alimony. The only thing he got to keep was his dumb car. She says that it wasn't like a nice car, but he really wanted it, so he got it. But her favorite part is the fact that she also found out that Clara, who was about 32, 33 years old, super healthy as far as she knew, ended up having a massive heart attack. Massive heart attack to the point that they had to do an open heart surgery on her. This debilitated her for so long that she ended up losing her job and pretty much depends on now Victor 24/7. And Victor doesn't really have much because most of the stuff and most of the assets and most of the businesses were Isabella's. But I guess she got her man, right? Have you ever been a victim of brujeria? If you have, definitely submit your stories. I have my email in my bio. Oh, and I forgot to add that Victor and Clara now live in a shoebox of an apartment. So good luck to them.
So when I was doing my undergrad in college, I needed one more class. I think it was for a sociology requirement or something, to graduate. And I was looking at what I had open, and what classes would fit into my schedule. And I was taking a 21 credit semester. So I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but like I was busy. So like the timing was tight. And one of the classes available that fit into my schedule was African American religions. And I was like, this could be a really good experience. Like, especially when dealing with patients, I feel like I'd probably learn a lot from it, right? So I signed up for it. So the class itself was very much an interactive course. Like, we would actually go to different places of worship. Like, I found myself in the middle of Cleveland in like a church of ISIS with a bunch of my classmates, which was wild. They did like a milk offering, which was so interesting. And then we went to a few other places of worship, and we'd write like papers on it, and we'd do a lot of research about the history of like African American culture and African American religion, which was exceptional. I really liked it. And then at the end of the course, we were all tasked to go to a primarily African American Baptist church. Now, I was raised Byzantine Catholic, like the angrier segment of Catholic, like Russian, Ukrainian Catholic, right? So like our church is very much like strict, and it's the same thing every time you go. The priest says the same thing every time you go, except for the sermon, which has to do with like a reading from the gospel, and like they talk about it, right? But that's what I had pretty much been exposed to my entire life. So I pick a church, and it had to be a Baptist church. So I pick a church and I go to it. It's like the more like Parma Heights area. And I turned in my report, and my teacher, who was a black woman, said this church was not black enough. And I was like, I looked it up online. Like, I don't know, I thought this was like the point of the assignment. And she was like, it was. But she's like, I really think, and I would really like for you to go to like a black church. And I'm not really understanding what she means. Like, I'm not understanding how it's going to be so different. I'm already culture shocked because they took me from a Byzantine Catholic church, which is the only place I'd ever been, into a church where they like touched the bread of the communion. And my little Byzantine heart was like ready to faint. Like, it was cash. It was very cash. So people were wearing like jeans. And to me, that was just like, I couldn't even fathom. I did not understand, right? I'm already culture shocked and stressed because of this experience. And she's like, no, I think you'd really like it, and you need to go to a black Baptist church. So I call my friend Jackie, and I'm like, Jackie, I need to go to a black Baptist church. And she was like, okay. Didn't ask a single question about this. So we find one. I can't remember the name of it. It was like a very large church, Baptist church, on like MLK Boulevard somewhere in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, near like Little Italy, I think. And so we go. I can't remember what time service started. I think it's called service. I think it was something like 10 or 11. Okay, but this matters. So we get there. We sit down like on the end of a pew, and then a nice woman showed up and kind of like sat next to us. So we scooted over because we didn't want to be in the way. So now we're like in the middle of a pew, and then another lady sits down on the other side of us. So it's a lady, me and my friend Jackie, and then another lady at the end of the pew, right? And this place is huge. I've like never been in a church this big before, and there are so many people. And then the mass starts. I think it's mass. I'm not sure. And there is singing and dancing and people like standing up and like shouting, which at first very much threw me off because it's not something I'm used to, because that's not the kind of church I ever went to. So it was like so cool to watch. They had like a presentation halfway through. Now, mind you, I went to Byzantine church, okay? So our mass is like 45 minutes to an hour tops. After an hour, the little old Russian babas are like going to have a talk with the priest about how they were supposed to be home at noon for lunch. Like, it doesn't go much longer than an hour when I used to go to church, or the babas get mad. So we're sitting there. It's like going on 2 hours, and I'm still sitting there like, man, we've been here for a minute. Like, And by the way, the last Baptist church I went to in like the Parma area, everyone was wearing like jeans. So I was like, okay, I'll put on like some like dark wash jeans or something and like a shirt. No. Okay, I did not know there was a difference between a white Baptist church and a black Baptist church. At that point then, I was just embarrassingly underdressed. Okay? Now we're over 2 hours in, a little over 2 hours in. And they stop and there's like, people are talking. And then the gentleman who was talking up front, I'm assuming he was the pastor, he said that they saw some new people in the church today, and he asked the new people to stand up. And he's like looking at me and my friend Jackie, and I'm like, I am not standing up. Like, just try to blend in. And she's like, what do you mean try to blend in? She's like, we are two super white women flanked by a sweet little black woman on each side. We look like a double stuffed Oreo. They are looking directly at us right now. They know we're not usually here because we glow. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. Like, this is the worst. I'm thinking they're going to be like, why are you here? You know? So we stand up as they asked us to. And everyone says hi. And it was very, very nice. And I thought maybe that was the end. Like, whew, okay. Like, we made it through the awkward greeting. But no. Instead of walking out of the pew, everybody sits back down. And then we're there for like another hour. It was like a 3, almost 4 hour event. I've never spent so much time in a church in my whole life. It was wild. It was so great. If I ever had the chance to get back, if I were back in Cleveland and I had a reason to go, I would go. And that is how Chelsea ended up in primarily African-American Baptist church, because her teacher said that the Baptist church she tried to go to wasn't black enough. And I learned a lot that day, and it was so great. And I do think it actually did help me better connect to a lot of the patients I see, because I mean, I just would have never known.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I had a dream last night. Well, it was more like a memory. So, story time. Boom, boom, it's story time. Boom, boom, paranormal Chicago activity. With Cat G. Hey, y'all. So, yeah, I had a dream, and it reminded me of something. It's about our ex-mayor, Rahm Emanuel. That man is evil as fuck. And I ain't got no hardcore proof on it yet, but I think he's a fucking reptilian. I said what I said, and I don't care who come after me for saying. Go look at the man pictures. Like, he always been a sketchy looking man, okay? Nothing about him ever screamed good person to me. Like, even when he was just on the TV screen running for mayor, I literally was like, he look a little snakish. I don't like it. But y'all listen, he was on his campaign run, right? And he another person that my grandma did not approve of. To be quite honest, no black person approved of this man. I can understand that politics wear you down. Like, I definitely know that. Hell, even AOC is out here looking a little bit older because they stressing her the fuck out. But it was something about Rahm. The more time went on, you could see the evil coming out of him. Okay, boom, fast forward. It's re-election time, right? For whatever reason why, he thought that it was a good idea to go to the red line stations. Well, let me change this. He went to all of the train stations that were like major hubs where a whole lot of people flowed through. What made him go to the 79th red line? I don't know, because we don't even want to go to the 79th red line. That motherfucker is dangerous. But he's standing out there, right? And he's sticking his hand out to shake people's hand, and motherfuckers is literally looking him up and down and walking. The more it's happening, the more he is getting mad. Like, he really is getting upset. His advisors say, well, maybe it's because you have on gloves. Take your gloves off. Seem a little bit more personal. The man take off his gloves. Y'all, from where I'm standing at, I can see a black aura around his hand. I literally focus in on his hand, and I cock my head to the side because I know I see what I see. This lady behind me, she has an accent. I know she's some type of islander. I don't know what type of islander she is, but she says, you see it too, huh? I looked at her. She said, go on now. Get from over here. Don't touch that man. I said, oh, you ain't got to worry about me. I see the evil all over him. She said, what you say now? What you see? The same black aura that's around that hand, I literally see it around his third eye. Like, it's centered right here. She said, oh, she take off from me. Baby, when I tell you she walked past that man, pulled out a bottle from her jacket and said, I vanish! I vanish! She got the speaking in tongue and shit. Everybody around her just stopped and it's just looking. She point two fingers at Rahm. She said something in some language I did not fucking understand. That man started turning 50 shades of red from his neck up to the top of his head. He took off his jacket, gave it to the people, to his little Secret Service team. But see, this is something else that caught my attention. When he gave it to the Secret Service team, they took it by the very edge of the clothing. They refused to actually touch it. Whole time, mind you, this woman is walking down the street screaming out Bible verses. So because I know what I saw, I'm not even finna cross his path. I honestly don't even want his mind's eye to look at me. At the 79th red line, I'm waiting for the bus, okay? It's the 75th Street bus. If anybody is from the south side of Chicago, they will tell you that motherfucking bus, baby, ooh, it will try all your patience. But the 75th Street bus moves so fucking slow. I looked at the little bus tracker thing. It said that the bus not coming for another 30 minutes. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to churches because, bitch, okra. I'm fat as fuck. I'm hungry. This what we finna. I go over to churches. I get me a large okra, a large soda, and a large biscuit, right? Head back over to the train. As I'm coming back to the train, I don't see Rahm Emanuel. Cool, fine, great. I got my space. Something told me to go check my bus card to see when it expired, right? Because I had a 7-day and I didn't know when it expired. So, okay, cool. I go in there and I'm checking it. This man walk up to me out of nowhere. He's standing in the back of me. I can feel some type of heavy ass force pushing on my. I turn around. First of all, he a little bit shorter than me. So I had to look down just a little bit. And he looking at me and he like, well, hello, how are you? He say, I'm Rahm Emanuel. And you are? He go into his whole spiel about how he hoped that he could depend on me for a vote and what his hopes is for the city and he just need more time. Again, whole time standing there with his hand out. And whole time I'm standing there like this. He say, well, at least a beautiful woman like you could shake my hand. I looked that man in his face. I said, did your demon tell you that was a good idea? His eyebrows pinched to the middle of his forehead so hard, I thought that this was going to bust. He said it's only a handshake. It's not. That man said, what do you think of me? I just told you. Why you still in my face? Secret Service man say, do you know who this is? You shouldn't be talking to him like that. I don't give a fuck if he was the president of the United States. Get the fuck out my face if I say get the fuck out my face. The Secret Service man stepped back for a second. He say, maybe you should just carry on and mind your business. Bitch, now you mess. Turn around, look directly at him. I said, how the fuck you gonna tell me to mind my business when I was literally minding my business and y'all came into my energy field, you maleficent energy sucking bitch. He tried to puff up his chest at me. And I stepped up to his ass. We damn near chest to chest. And I told him, who the fuck do you think you are? You think I'm scared of you? I'm not scared of you. Take y'all evil ass the fuck from over here. Stop trying to damn the people that you fucking touching just because they a little bit too ignorant to know what the fuck you really are. Goodbye. I'm officially banning you. Get the fuck on. I looked at Rahm. He looked at me. I said goodbye. And that man walked off. I seen him again downtown at the city building, unfortunately. He looked at me, I looked at him. He said, hello. I said, don't do this again. Don't do this again. I'ma burn your ass. Get the fuck on. He said, are you really finna test the Star Child? He stopped talking. Get the fuck on. Leave me the fuck alone and I'ma leave you the fuck alone. Get the fuck on. That man said, see, this is why I hate the people of this fucking city. I said, yeah, because we not the stupid idiots that you thought we was. We see your ass. Get the fuck on. The last time I met that man, he was at a church, and I didn't like the things that he was saying to one of the elders, so I shook his hand and I told him his time was up. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, he didn't last too much longer after that. Next thing you know, that man started looking like a sunken man. You know, cheeks is hollow. Eyes is sunken in, grayish looking skin. He always looks sickly as fuck. Don't play with my city. Don't play with my city. Leave the south side the fuck alone.
In 1971, a 19-year-old Irishman named William began studying physics and computer science at a university in Belfast, Northern Ireland. While he was certainly smart enough to complete the 4-year degree, after 1 year of being in the school, he decided to drop out because he felt like this was not the path he wanted to be on. So he moved back home to a town about 30 minutes north of Belfast, where he got a job as a forklift driver and truck driver for the Guinness Beer Factory. And while he loved this job, he still felt like this was not the path for him. He needed to do something more with his life. And so he decided he would pursue what 2 of his siblings had gone on to do, which was to become a school teacher. He had always admired his school teachers growing up, and he idolized his 2 siblings that had become teachers, and so it felt like the right fit. And so William applied to a 4-year teaching college in Newcastle in England, and after he was accepted, he flew to England, he got set up, and then he began his studies. The first year was great. He loved what he was doing, he did feel like this is the right fit, and he was getting good grades, everything was going exactly to plan. But then year 2 happened and everything went off the rails. A requirement to graduate from this 4-year teaching college was all the aspiring teachers starting in their 2nd year had to go teach real students real lessons. They basically had to go to high schools and elementary schools and fill in for the real teacher and give a real lesson. And they were scored on their ability to do that. But all the aspiring teachers knew that when you gave these real lessons to real students, what really ended up happening was the students did not take the aspiring teachers seriously. They viewed them as kind of like substitute teachers, and so they didn't respect them and they didn't listen to them. And so typically these real teaching sessions just turned into the aspiring teachers desperately trying to calm down their pupils long enough to get them to listen to their lesson plan for just 1 second. But normally it didn't work out, and before long the day was over and nothing was really accomplished. So in William's 2nd year, when it was his turn to go over to a high school and administer his lesson plan, he went over there knowing what he was up against. He did not really expect it to go well. But he decided he would go in there with a positive attitude and he would try to do his best. But as soon as he walked into his classroom, he immediately could tell he was going to be overwhelmed. Everybody's standing up and talking amongst themselves, and they turn around and they see William walking in, and they have this moment of realization that their real teacher is not going to be teaching them that day. It's going to be this substitute, William, and they all kind of gleefully began laughing and joking, and they just turned their backs on William and kept talking amongst themselves. And so William goes inside, he puts his stuff on the desk, and he attempts to get the class to listen to him by saying, "Hey everyone, come on, sit down, time to listen up, I'm your new teacher for the day." But the kids just were not listening. And so finally, William, who was a really big guy, he was 6'4", he was in great shape, he kind of postured himself and then yelled at the class, "Sit down right now." And at this, the class did turn around and looked at William and kind of sized him up, and most of them decided, okay, it's time to sit down. And so 99% of the class goes quiet and sits down, except for one kid. It was this 15-year-old boy who was at the back of the room, and he was standing up, defiant, with his arms crossed, staring at William with a smirk on his face. And all around him, all his cronies were sitting down, looking up at him, laughing, and kind of looking up at William and laughing at him, knowing that a confrontation was about to ensue. And so William is staring at this kid, trying to get him to just sit without saying anything, and this kid is just mean mugging him with his arms crossed, and nothing's happening. And so William walks right up to him and kind of leans over his shoulder and says, "You need to go out in the hallway right now. I will meet you out there." And then William turned around and started walking back towards the front of the room, expecting this to have worked, that this 15-year-old kid would have just followed right along and he'd walk right out to the hallway and that would be that. But when he turned back around again, the 15-year-old kid had not moved. He was still standing in the back of the classroom, arms crossed, staring up at William, basically saying, "Make me." And at this, William lost his mind. He was so mad and so frustrated at how unbelievably disrespectful this kid was being, and really the whole class was being to him, that he just kind of lost it. And he ran up to this kid in the back of the room and he gets right up in his face. And remember, William is 6'4". He's a big guy. And he gets right in the kid's face and he's like, "Get out in the hall right now." And this kid doesn't flinch. Instead, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a knife, and he holds it right up against William. And William, without any hesitation, just winds up and blasts this kid across the side of the head, sending him flying over a kid sitting at a desk. He goes flying over this kid and crumples into the corner. And then when he stands up, he drops the knife and puts his hands up, and he's like, okay, I'll go out in the hall. And William's like, go out in the hall right now. And so the kid ran out of the classroom, he goes out into the hall, and the whole class is totally silent. No one even wants to look up at William. They're all kind of just looking down at their desk, trying to be as quiet as possible. And William walks back to the front of the class and proceeds to teach the rest of the lesson. As soon as the high school learned that this aspiring teacher, William, had basically knocked out one of their students, even though it seemed like it might have been a little bit deserved, they immediately told the teacher's college, and the teacher's college immediately expelled William. And so now William is suddenly jobless, and he's kind of lost again in the world. He doesn't know what he wants to do now because he really had committed to being a teacher. And so he goes back to his home in Northern Ireland, and he begins thinking about, what is he going to do next? And he keeps having this thought that he should pursue this thing that he's always been interested in, but he had never taken seriously because it felt so risky. But now that basically everything in his life had fallen apart, he had nothing to lose. So he decided, what the heck, I will do the thing that I've always wanted to do. And that was stage acting. And so he went and auditioned with a local theater company in Belfast. He was accepted into the theater troupe. And then 4 years later, he was discovered performing on stage by a Hollywood filmmaker. And they cast him in a movie. And the rest, as they say, is history. William Neeson, better known as Liam Neeson, would go on to star in dozens of huge movies and TV shows. And he's probably best known for his epic role in the movie Taken, where he is this CIA operative with a particular set of skills, and in this movie he punches a lot of people in the face, just like when he was a teacher.
Never get up to use the restroom at 3 in the morning. Why the fuck was this story on my FYP? I got these cute earrings at Spencer's, and at this point, Spencer's, you need to sponsor me. Or at the very least, send your girl some earrings. How cute are they though? There's like a little mirror. Look, you could see my phone recording. I hate this story because I'm the type of person that wakes up like 2 times in the middle of the night to go to the restroom because I have to pee. So if you're like me, maybe don't listen to this story. Actually, yes, listen to this story because we need to be scared together. So Yasmin says that a few days ago she woke up around 3 in the morning because she really needed to use the restroom. She explains that when she got up, there was like a really weird silence, like eerie silence, almost like if somebody was there or like something heavy was around. She says that she started walking very quietly towards the restroom so that she didn't wake anybody up, and when she got there she closed the door and she locked it. As soon as she locks the door, she says that she hears what sounds like somebody walking very slowly towards the restroom door and whispering, Jocelyn, Jocelyn. She says that she felt like her heart skip a beat and she did not recognize the voice, and nobody else was awake in her house. And then she hears the voice again, Jocelyn, Jocelyn. Bitch, don't lie, my breath does not stink. She explains how she did not respond to the voice, and in her head she just started praying over and over again. She says that when she finished the prayer, she felt an arm on her shoulder, and that, oh my god, I have chills, and that voice again saying, Jocelyn, you should have never gotten out of bed at this time. She says that ever since that night, she didn't see anybody. She went out the door, nobody was there, but she hasn't been able to sleep in peace since then. She tries to lie to herself and tell herself that maybe she was dreaming, maybe she was half asleep and she thought she heard something. However, even as she is writing this story down to send to the Spanish podcast, she explains that she feels like if somebody is watching her from the corner of her room. All I'm gonna say is if this thing decides to go to the restroom with me, that thing's gonna be the one scared. Just kidding, don't come to the restroom with me, oh my god. Anyways, what do you guys think?